How much magnesium do you actually need each day? Well, the FDA recommends 420 milligrams per day for adults. That's their recommended daily intake, but that is the amount that you need at a minimum to avoid a deficiency. According to doctors Mildred Steelig and Andrea Rosanoff, they say optimal magnesium intake is a formula and it's based upon body weight. So for every pound of body weight, your body needs 5 milligrams of magnesium. I weigh about 200 pounds, so I'm aiming to reach about 1,000 milligrams of magnesium per day.
The 3,751 biochemical reactions the body requires magnesium for makes perfect sense because it's all these like enzymatic functions and metabolic functions. And that's not even talking about like your stress level. Like today, waking up this morning and being in some kind of stressful situation, how much magnesium you're burning. So yeah, if you're getting leg cramps and you're able to mentally redirect your magnesium, you're really running low on gas. Hey, it's Healthy Gut Girl, Kitty Martone, and this is Stuff Your Doctor Should Know. I'm coming to you live from deep inside your large intestine. And I am going to talk today about something that is nothing new. But the reason that I have to always repeat it is because it is so incredibly crucial for our health. And that is, of course, the importance of magnesium. Now, today we have Patrick Sullivan on again, and he is one of my favorite guests because he's so funny and because he owns Jigsaw Health. And Jigsaw Health is one of my favorite companies to buy, well, probably my only company that I buy magnesium from, because they have such a variety of different types of magnesium. So sometimes, someone will recommend like Premier Research Labs magnesium, but it's only a specific one type of magnesium. And there are so many types. And so a lot of people do better with exploring different types or combining different types. And so for Jigsaw to simplify things, they just have all types, including topical versions. And he's here today to talk briefly with us. It's a short one, but it's an important one about leg cramps and the shocking fact about nighttime leg cramps. So that's really cool. But before we go there, I want to just read to you some crazy facts about magnesium that a lot of people don't even know about. So first of all, 80% of people are deficient in magnesium. And this goes back to the whole concept of the magnesium burn rate and how stressed we are and how magnesium is like the main mineral that gets depleted when we are stressed. And stress can be, emotional stress, work, finances, relationships. But then there's also the stressors like the being exposed to toxic burdens, mold, parasites, the pesticides in our food, the different chemicals in our food. All of these things are also stressors. And so, inflammation, obesity, all stressors. And they cost us magnesium. And so 80%. That's a shocking statistic because that means that so many things that we suffer from, like heart disease, anxiety, depression, insomnia, don't have to happen. And it could be literally just the magnesium deficiency, which is amazing. And we talk about something in this podcast that I really liked, that I came up with. I was really proud of it. and he addresses it, and it's something about heart health. And then I also want to talk about the different bodily functions that require magnesium, but something that a lot of people don't know about, and I talk about a lot, is obviously hormone regulation and how important magnesium is for the different enzymatic functions and changes in the body that help us to normalize and regulate hormones. So people are always talking about cortisol, 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 and they talk about it like it's a bad thing. Well, it's our stress hormone. It's the hormone that kind of gets excreted and comes up in our bodies when we need help with stressors. So it's there to save our lives, and it requires certain enzymatic functions that take place in the body. And what makes those functions happen is magnesium. And so another really interesting fact, and this is going to blow your mind, a lot of times people default to saying, I have genetic mutation that doesn't allow me to X, Y, or Z. Right? It doesn't allow me to detoxify properly. It doesn't allow me to absorb vitamin D properly. It doesn't allow me to on and on. I have naturally high cholesterol because of these genetic mutations that I have. Well, guess what triggers? So you can have a genetic mutation. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to express itself in your body, right? It's kind of like I might be genetically predisposed to playing the piano, but I'm not just going to all of a sudden be really good at playing the piano just because I'm genetically predisposed to it. I might be better at it than other people who don't have that genetic predisposition. Same thing with high cholesterol, for example. I might be genetically predisposed to having high cholesterol, but in order to activate those genes, I have to do something to activate them. And normally when it comes to these kind of imbalances, it has to do with lifestyle triggers. Well, guess what flips on and off those types of genes? Magnesium helps to keep them deactivated. It helps keeping them from expressing themselves in regards to genetic predispositions like hormone imbalance, detoxification at the liver, vitamin A, vitamin E absorption, conversion, stuff like that. Magnesium can help you to keep those activations, keep those genes from being activated. That's wild. So a lot of people think, it doesn't matter if I'm genetically predisposed to this is the way it's going to be. Well, maybe getting, first of all, your magnesium levels up to where they need to be, which is, we talk about dosing in this episode, so I won't beat the horse, but working on simple things like that, getting your magnesium levels up through diet and through supplementation can actually keep you from actually having to deal with that MTHFR. Now, it's not always the case, but it's one of the big players when it comes to genetic expression. That's amazing. Okay, then calcium supplements can make things worse. Many people take calcium supplements for bone health, but without adequate magnesium, excess calcium can actually lead to calcification in arteries, increasing the risk of heart disease and stroke and kidney stones. And I'm going to go a little further here and say gout. I'm going to add gout in there. And then prescription drugs deplete magnesium. This is just a fact, and I think most of us already know this. If you're on any type of pharmaceutical medication, likely it is depleting your magnesium levels. And so it'd probably be a good idea and safe to say you should definitely supplement with magnesium. So I hope that those are interesting to you, and I hope you take magnesium very seriously. I hope you think often about nutrient-dense foods that include magnesium. And Patrick Sullivan is here to tell you all about it. So leg cramps. But by the way, this is just a true story. You guys had sent me a bag of adrenal cocktail quite a while ago, and it was with all my supplements, and I hadn't touched it. And I had it in the past, but I hadn't opened this bag. And I was going through some stressful times, Florida, all the things. And I was like, oh my God, my adrenal cocktail's up here. And I pull it down and it's the packets. And I started taking it just like 4 days ago. I'm like, why did I forget how awesome this adrenal cocktail is? Yeah. It's wild. I don't know. It just really, I feel like it, it's not a dramatic, like the way Mag Soothe can be, like dramatic calming effect. It's just like I notice I'm not so on edge, and I notice that I don't have adrenal dumps as much,
Yes. Well, you're taking care of your adrenals.
Yeah.
I mean, you're feeding them the salt and the vitamin C that they use to operate. That's the whole, it's such a cool formula. It's so simple and so effective.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. So let's talk about leg cramps. Another thing that had been happening recently, and I don't know why. I'm telling you, I started eating way too much watermelon, and I was drinking a ton of coconut water. Now that has tons of potassium, so you'd think that I wouldn't get leg cramps, but that's the only thing I could attribute it to. My toes, my feet. I'm like, what's going on? So of course I'm like, you know what? I must have taken way too much potassium from the watermelon and the coconut water. I better up my magnesium dose. Of course, it helped.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we picked a title for this podcast, but may I suggest the surprising cause of nighttime leg cramps and why bananas probably won't help.
Okay, I'll keep that.
And the reason is because there's actually two types of muscle cramps. This is something that I learned years ago from Dr. Decker Weiss. He's a member of Jigsaw's scientific advisory board.
Mhm.
He's a naturopathic cardiologist, and he taught me that there's two types of leg cramps. So if you're in the midst of a physical activity and you start to cramp up, that could be related to a potassium deficiency. And yes, bananas, watermelon, those are high in potassium. But those agonizing Charlie horses in the middle of the night,
Yeah, where you think you're going to die.
where they just kind of strike and you're like, oh, I'm getting a cramp. Those are often linked to magnesium deficiency. Two different minerals, two different kinds of leg cramps, two different kinds of
Interesting.
muscle cramps.
Yeah. Interesting. And what, I mean, why? So it's a deficiency in the muscle that's causing the cramping?
Yes. So inside of the cells, there's calcium and magnesium, and they go back and forth inside of this calcium channel. So calcium clenches the cells, magnesium relaxes the cells, and we need that peristaltic movement. There's a similar potassium sodium pump that sodium clenches, potassium relaxes. So it's like four kids sitting on two teeter totters. And if ever calcium or sodium get too high, you end up with the clenching, the muscle cramps. And what's kind of interesting is it kind of makes sense. Calcium and sodium are very prevalent in the food supply. I mean, sodium found in almost everything,
Yeah.
right? Anything savory is going to have sodium, salt in it. Calcium, dairy, bread, uh, calcium is very prevalent. Magnesium, potassium, not as prevalent. We talked about some of the magnesium rich foods. Well, we talked about, some watermelon, bananas. Those are rich in potassium. Magnesium, you've got dark chocolate actually is a great source. You've got nuts and seeds like pumpkin seeds, almonds, cashews. Not my favorite, but like dried spinach, black beans, chia seeds, avocado. Those are foods that are rich in magnesium. I mean,
And
look at your diet, right? Look at your diet and also really kind of look at your stress because as you use energy, those cells are clenching and moving faster. So you're burning up and you're more likely to burn up magnesium and potassium than you are to burn up calcium and sodium. Basically, four of the five key electrolytes, the fifth one being chloride.
okay, interesting. Um, so yeah, I wondered, I mean, I guess stress always makes sense for everything, but I also wonder if there's a CO2 component, like, because one of the things that when I get those ones in the middle of the night where you really, you're like, is this how I'm going to die? Like, do people die of cramps? Like, is it going to reach my heart and kill me? And I, the only thing, because, I can't like run into the kitchen and take magnesium, is like I lay there and I take deep, calculated, conscious,
Mm,
present breaths and it's hard to do and try not to react to the cramp,
yeah.
try like, jump around the bedroom, but just lay there and just try to relax and breathe. And it really does take away, it really does, you can make it through the cramping long enough to get up and go do a glass of Mag Soothe.
Are
But
are you sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, I was just saying like, so I think the breathing, I wonder what that CO2 component, obviously you're getting oxygen into your muscles,
Yeah.
and the concept of cramping would be like a suffocation, right? The lack of oxygen. I don't know if that makes sense.
Are you into meditation, specifically Dr. Joe Dispenza?
I have done some of Joe Dispenza. I do quite a bit of prayer meditation. In fact,
Okay.
I'm working on an entire series of scripture-led meditations. And it's all breathing, heart rate cadence, and then scripture-led meditation. So as I'm
Beautiful.
working on those things to create that, I'm also doing them to make sure, they're all great. But yeah, I have done Joe Dispenza in the past, and he's wacky. I love him.
He is wacky. And I think I like that he knows he's wacky. He
Yeah.
makes fun of himself, and his meditations sound like the Wizard of Oz.
It takes you a
Uh,
little while to get used to
yeah.
his voice before you're like, okay, I'm not actually in the Wizard of Oz.
Right. Well, Ashley and I, my wife Ashley and I, are going to a advanced retreat next week in Nashville, and so we have been getting into there's sort of some pre-work that you go through, where you watch some videos and go through some guided meditations. And I started meditating about a year ago using the Brain Tap app, where it's guided meditation, and it has been really good. A great thing to stack with sauna in the morning
Mm-hmm.
after a workout. And so Joe Dispenza, I'm new to that by about a month or so. But as I'm going through the meditations, I'm like, okay, this is really a more advanced than what I was getting on Brain Tap. And the reason I bring it up in context to breathing and focusing on the muscle cramp is I was reminded about, Dr. Joe talking about where you turn your attention is where your energy goes. So perhaps there is the mind-body connection where you, through breathing and intention, are turning your body's energy to your calves or your foot or wherever that cramp is located in a way that sends the autonomic nervous systems. It knows better than we do how to heal us.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, perhaps the autonomic nervous system is saying, oh, we're deficient in potassium, we're deficient in magnesium in that area of the body. I'm going to draw some of it from elsewhere and quickly move it there.
That's cool. That makes sense. That makes total sense, actually. Yeah. I love that.
Well, I don't know if it's right, but it does
It
make
is.
sense.
It's right. It's
Okay.
scientifically correct. I just did a double blind placebo in my brain and it said 2 thumbs up.
Good. Well, if it works anecdotally for
Hmm.
me, that's good enough for me.
Exactly. I mean, there's also all this stuff I've been reading about and studying a lot lately about, glucose utilization and CO2. My friend Constantine wrote this article. He has a Substack that's amazing. And he just um, writes these articles about things like this one he just did is runny nose, a stuffy nose and congestion, chronic stuffy nose and congestion. And you read it and it's like it gives you all these concepts that you just would never think of. Yeah, he talks about like your first thing when you think stuffy nose, you think dietary, gut health, maybe allergies. But he goes into like all of a sudden has this plot twist about the way you utilize glucose and how you breathe and how that can affect your respiratory, the inflammation in your sinuses. And it's mind blowing. And so what you just said sounds exactly like, you're shifting your CO2 usage, you're creating, a pathway for the body to address the cramp, the
Mm-hmm.
spasm. And so now, because you're in that state of mind and you're utilizing your oxygen well, your body can redirect its nutrients to help that deficiency. It's probably not going to fix it. You're going to have to ultimately be like, okay, why am I running on empty so much? But certainly makes perfect sense that it could help, that's what's helping. That's the mechanism that's helping through breathing. Yeah, I think that's so cool.
As I was building that model, that idea, that explanation out loud in my brain, I realized that I was thinking about like, okay, if you're redirecting magnesium from one part of the body to the other, you're not replenishing your magnesium. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit here. And I
Exactly.
think that's a key thing. Years ago, I was at a health conference and talking to a woman about magnesium, and she asked a great question. She said, "Can I get addicted to magnesium?" And it took me aback. I had to think about it. I was like, you know what? You already are. Magnesium is one of the 5 key electrolytes. They're essential nutrients, meaning essential. We have to get them from our diet. We have to intake them. Our body does not manufacture magnesium or potassium or any of the other electrolytes. our bodies run on those electrolytes, and it's requiring us to get them.
That's 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 a truth bomb there. That's a profound like bomb. Um, because again, going back to Morley Robbins and our magnesium burn rate, it's almost like, yeah, the addiction is your body's like, give me more because it's essential. And
Yeah.
I'm burning it up like crazy. I mean, the 3,751 biochemical reactions the body requires magnesium for makes perfect sense, because it's all these like enzymatic functions and
Yeah.
metabolic functions. And so, and that's not even talking about like your stress level, like today, waking up this morning and being in some kind of stressful situation, how much magnesium you're burning. So yeah, if you're getting leg cramps and you're able to mentally redirect your magnesium, it's like you're, like you said, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Your gas, you're really running low on gas. So you need to
Yeah.
fill that tank up for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I looked up because for me as healthy gut girl, I try nuts and seeds are amazing. I love them. I don't eat a ton of them because I feel like a lot of people can't, or I don't recommend a ton of them because a lot of people can't digest them. That's why they see them in their poo, is because they're chewing them and they don't make it, they just don't get absorbed because so many people have gut dysbiosis. And then a lot of people buy roasted seeds, they buy cooked seeds and nuts, and they're rancid or they're oxidized, or they use peanut butter or almond butter or those kinds of butters.
Or they're roasting them in canola oil
Yeah,
or safflower oil, which are bad seed oils that lead to
PUFAs.
inflammation.
Exactly.
Do you ever use like sprouted organic nuts and seeds?
Totally.
Sprouting is awesome.
I love to sprout seeds. My favorite is pumpkin seeds. Um, because I think that there's some anti-nutrients in flax and in chia, how they
Mhm.
get slimy.
Yeah. Mm.
That like mucilagical, if that's a word, boogery stuff is
We'll accept both
okay.
muciologically and boogery.
Okay. You know what I meant, and that's all that matters, is
Right.
that they can be harsh on the gut if you eat them all the time. Like I know people, and I used to be one of these people who would add chia seeds to every smoothie just because I knew they were good for me.
Yeah.
And meanwhile had gut dysbiosis and leaky gut, and that was contributing to that problem. So
Mm.
it's like, okay, so I feel like, again, with the balancing, and I think measuring out the amount, like you just mentioned, actually, you might not have said that in this podcast, but we said it earlier about how much magnesium is in raw pumpkin seeds.
Yeah, so raw pumpkin seeds, a fourth of a cup has about 160 milligrams of magnesium, which, again, going to the RDI and how much magnesium do you need? Like myself personally, I aim to get about 1,000 milligrams per day of magnesium. And I love to mix the pumpkin seeds into my Greek yogurt in the morning.
Mhm.
It's a 16% or so of my daily intake I'm getting from those pumpkin seeds.
Nice. Well, I pumpkin seeds are my favorite, and I like to buy them raw, organic, and then I like to toast them with no oil at all. Just put them in a pan and toast them. And then I can put that quarter cup into a salad or into a
Mm,
stir fry. I love that. And
that's awesome.
yeah. But anyway, I brought that up because a lot of my people who have gut stuff, I tell them don't do nuts and seeds right now. And so I was looking up the foods that are highest in magnesium that are animal foods. And you
Mm,
had mentioned salmon earlier, mackerel, halibut, tuna, sardines, beef,
yep.
chicken, especially dark meat. Hallelujah to that. Turkey, pork, and eggs. Did not know that. Those are the animal foods that are highest in magnesium.
Yeah. Well, all of those protein, those are muscles. And we have magnesium in our muscles. So it makes sense that the animals are also going to have magnesium in their muscles. So it's, I don't think we want to go down the road of like vegetarian diets versus paleo diets or whatever. I'm kind of if ancestral diet. If our ancestors ate it, I feel like it's probably okay for me too.
Hmm.
So I think that yeah, the nuts and seeds, you're right, they can have, if they're raw, that's when I think they're called phytonutrients, if I'm not mistaken, that are there because a seed, it's it's kind of reproduction and evolution of a plant that grows seeds. It wants to basically spawn and create another plant. So the seed itself has these
Oh,
phytochemicals,
the
phytic
phytic
acid,
acids.
that's what it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, that's the word I was thinking of.
Yeah. They
The
do have
phytic acid
phytonutrients as well.
also, yeah, but the phytic acid is there to prevent bunnies and such from eating the seed before it can drop into the ground and create another plant.
Hmm.
If we eat raw nuts and seeds, well, we're going to get that phytic acid. So if you sprout it, which is a process of like essentially soaking it in water, usually for like 24 hours, and then you have to let it dry. So if you get like a dehydrator, that's going to help dry it a lot faster. Not only does it then sort of break the phytic acid, but it also tastes better. Sprouted organic cashews, almonds, so good. The brand that I'm into right now that Ashley and I have been mixing into our yogurt is, I think it's called Lake Ellen. It's got a little bit of sugar, but it's cane sugar. It's organic cane sugar. And these sprouted organic nuts and the granola is fantastic tasting.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, I love to sprout everything, even the beans that I make. When I
Mm,
make like black beans or whatever, pinto beans, I will soak them for 48 hours
yeah.
until I see the little sprout come out. I rinse it every day. I'll rinse it out, put fresh water. And then once I see that pop open, and you can see all of the gas coming off the top of the water. Like you can
Yeah.
see the bubbles because if you eat it like that, if you eat, even if you cook it and you
Yes.
hadn't sprouted it, that gas is why people can't digest nuts, seeds, and beans, right? And so
Well,
you
it's
can
the
see
gas.
it.
Yeah, it's the gas. It's going to come up from the bowl, or it's going to come out from somewhere else.
Exactly,
I
exactly.
have a funny story. It's podcast relevant. Peek into our lives, me and Ashley. She did some what were they? I think they were Peruvian beans, maybe about a month ago. And kind of went fast on the soaking process because she was like, "Oh, I forgot to soak these. I'll just put them into the soup." And the soup was awesome. It was a chicken bone broth soup with celery, carrots, and Peruvian beans.
Did you get
And
permission from Ashley to tell this story?
no, I did not get permission, so we might have to edit this out if this comes back to bite me, y'all. Okay, if you if you know why, if I show up dead, you'll know why. But we were walking Monk and Lola, Monk, who's enjoying some time on my lap. We were walking them after dinner because she made it, I think, for lunch or something. But I was like, so farty walking around the block. She's like, "What happened to you?" I'm like, "I don't know. What did we do?" She's like, "Oh crap. This actually might be my fault."
Oh, crap is
So
right.
it is true. And yeah, too funny, right?
It is funny. And since you brought up your wife, I'll bring up my husband. He's extra sensitive. Like he can tell me, he can be like eating whatever I made, and he'll say, "You didn't soak these long enough." I'm like, uh-oh. I can
I
get
gotta go out in
away
the
with two,
backyard.
yeah, I can get away with 2 days of soaking, but he needs it like 3 days. It
Mm,
has to, and the warmer outside, the better. And because then the sprout really comes out quickly. But isn't that interesting? That goes to show you, like, these foods are miraculous. God put them on this
yes.
earth. They're so wonderful. But like you got to
Amen.
be careful. You got to be
Yeah.
careful. Like they've got to be digestible for you.
Yeah.
Some people can do fine with just, not soaking.
Yeah.
But
And some people can do fine with raw almonds and raw cashews.
right.
We have different gut flora happening in each of us, but it's the more you know, the more you can be like, oh, that's probably what that was.
Yeah, that's why I'm farty McGillicuddy.
Okay, that's actually what we should call this podcast.
Okay, Farty
Farty
McGillicuddy.
McGillicuddy.
It'll probably get more
Clickbait for
traction.
sure.
Yeah. But it's worth it. You get what you come for.
That's right. That's right.
Cool. Well, okay, so do you have anything else to tell us about leg cramps, or not even leg cramps, but what about other cramps? Like sometimes you get like forearm cramps. Are they all the same? Or you said there's two
Yes.
types, but I mean,
Well,
just in
there's two
general.
types, but it's based upon when they occur. And I mean, as a young kid, I grew up with my family in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and Grapevine, Texas, right by the DFW airport.
Know it well.
And I played a lot of soccer growing up. And it's hot. You're going to sweat in Texas. And I would sneak into my parents' room like late at night and be like, just in agony, like my legs hurt so bad. And they didn't know then what we know now about magnesium. Also, growing up and still today, I don't like bananas. So even if they tried to feed me a banana, number one, I wouldn't eat it. I would not have eaten it. And number two, it wouldn't work because it's not what I needed. I needed magnesium.
Mm-hmm.
But I would, go back to my room with the heating pad, turn it on, and get some relief from that. But my goodness, had I known then what I know now, had my parents known, it's like, okay, here's some Mag Soothe. You need to drink this every night before you go to bed because I'm tired of you waking me up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I got three other kids besides you, Patrick. You can't be the one with all the problems here. Okay.
That was me. That was definitely me.
So I think, and that leads to the next question we get a lot. Can kids take magnesium? Absolutely. Kids are tiny humans that also need electrolytes. Mag Soothe is a great way to do it. We also at Jigsaw Health have an electrolyte supreme powdered electrolyte mix that has a good bit of magnesium in it as well. Kids tend to love it. Moms love it as well because it's sugar-free. We use erythritol, monk fruit, and stevia to sweeten it. And it tastes great. It's also got a broad mixture of all the electrolytes, but magnesium in particular is a winner.
That is going to be a perfect outtake. Well, so where does dehydration play into cramping? Because I would hear that from coaches all the time growing up. You get a cramp while you're working out and they're just like, go drink some water. You're dehydrated. You're dehydrated.
Myself and Ashley, we recently went on a trip to Japan, and I had just read like a tweet thread about hydration. And specifically, I don't remember, so I can't give credit to it, but it was someone talking about like hydration. It's not about the water, it's about the minerals.
Yeah, I agree.
And I kind of thought of it as like, oh, well, that's interesting. And of course, from America to Japan, it's a really long flight. Nobody wants to have to get up and go to the bathroom all the time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do an experiment here where I really focus on electrolytes more than water. And I mixed electrolytes, the pickleball cocktail electrolyte formula is what I was using on this trip. And I hardly went to the bathroom on this trip, and I never felt thirsty. And I didn't get any leg cramps or cramping issues either.
Mm-hmm.
But then for the rest of the trip, the 2 weeks that we were in Japan, I did the same thing. I kept focusing on it. Like, okay, anytime I drink water, I'm going to load up on electrolytes. And what's kind of funny is I know a lot of people don't like the taste of just plain water. I do. Like, I don't know. I just kind of like it. It seems quenching. But I think that the theory that I read in the tweet thread was like, in human history, we didn't really actually get to drink a lot of water because it wasn't necessarily freshly available. And yet in the soups, which is a very sort of common thing that people would use to, basically bone broth type of mixtures that people would have, lots of electrolytes in the bones of these animals that get boiled down into the bone broth. And so I think that I think the high school coach was wrong, basically. If you're dehydrated, go get some water. That's not the answer. If you're showing signs of cramping, low energy, dizziness, fatigue, those kinds of things, it's really a sign of low batteries, right? And I think batteries is kind of the right thing to think about. Our batteries run on electrolytes. They're electrically charged minerals, electrolytes. Magnesium, potassium being the toughest to get from the food supply. And when they're out of balance with their counterparts, calcium and sodium, that's when you end up with the seizing up of those muscles.
Interesting. That was so well said. And it makes me think about the pro-metabolic community that, I'm really sort of digging into in the last few years. They don't recommend half your weight in ounces daily, which is the common thing that's been thrown out there for years. I used to also recommend that. They don't recommend that at all. In fact, they're saying, well, you're urinating out a lot of your minerals. You're urinating out a lot of your nutrients that way. And some people even think that you're diluting stomach acid when you drink too much water. And so they say the same, like you should be getting hydrated from your food, from your bone broths, your soups, all of these things. And as you said, bone broth, I had typed in bone broth and how much magnesium, and it's more minerals like magnesium, calcium, potassium are extracted from the bones. While it may not be the highest source of magnesium compared to other foods, it's still going to be densely nutrient rich with minerals.
Right.
And so, that makes sense to me as well. Yeah, the coach was wrong. Although back then we were drinking from garden hoses, and I bet there was a lot of minerals in those garden hoses.
Yeah, it certainly tasted like it, right?
Yeah, it did. Okay, so I have something kind of that popped into my head the other day, which is, my stepfather had a heart attack in April. I think it was April. And he survived it and he's doing well.
Good.
But it was not his first. And he is 84. And he I was asking him what it feels like. And he said, it's like a Charlie horse in your heart. Well, at first it's like, there's signs, you're getting these signs. And then, there's this incredible like cramping, or can be. And I found that to be really interesting because I also know that magnesium plays a big role in heart health. And so could that be, maybe it's a silly question, kind of childlike question, but is a heart attack a heart cramp?
It is the best question you've asked so far, and maybe the most important question that your listeners need to hear. Yes. In fact, I've never heard it said that way. A heart attack is a heart cramp. It's the seizing up. Morley Robbins, he worked with Dr. Dennis Goodman on a book called Magnificent Magnesium. And Dr. Goodman is a cardiologist based in New York. And in that, he really looks at, and Morley uses the analogy of like, the heart isn't like a pump, it's like a nuclear reactor that runs on magnesium. And one of the things, I can't remember if it's from that book or if it's just from another story that I heard from Morley, but the source is definitely Morley. And you can Google it if you Google marathon heart attack, there will be a recent story from somewhere of someone dying at the end of a marathon from a heart attack. And I think the best speculation is they literally ran out of magnesium at the end. Obviously, a marathon, 26.2 miles, very far, you're pushing yourself, but isn't that a healthy person that we're seeing? I mean, if you can run 26 miles, you're healthy, right? what's on the outside is not necessarily reflective of what is on the inside. And if you're not specifically focused on magnesium and potassium, you're likely to be in an imbalance with an imbalance with sodium and calcium. And I think that, quite frankly, sports drinks have been doing a giant disservice to the athletic community for a very long time. Mostly these are sugary water with a little bit, and usually not the greatest forms of the electrolytes. Now, it's true, our bodies absolutely do need a certain amount of glucose, sugar, like we do need that. And sugar, true, also helps to shuttle electrolytes through the body. So I'm not opposed to a sugar form of electrolytes, but when you look at like Gatorade that has 32 grams of sugar, and the FDA says like, well, the daily intake of sugar should be no more than 50 grams. And the American Heart Association says it should be no more than 25 grams. Now, quite frankly, I don't know if they are the authority. They claim to be, and I think we all kind of learned that maybe the experts aren't as expert as they should be. But I think you look at the mineral content of that same Gatorade, and it's like, this is nothing. This is doing nothing, but it's delivering sugar in the high fructose corn syrup form of sugar, not the natural cane sugar. So
Yeah.
I love that you just created a new phrase. It's a heart attack is a heart cramp.
Makes sense, right? And that does bring in the thought of during, if you recall, after the vaccine, after COVID and then the vaccine, a lot of people were having problems dropping down from heart attacks, but they were like soccer players, rugby players, marathon runners. And Dr. Malone or Dr. Patrick, what was his name? No, you're Patrick Sullivan. The famous doctor.
Dr.
I always
Robert
forget
Malone,
his name. And Dr.
Pierre Corey. I think I
the
feel like I learned a lot from
cardiologist,
him.
nephrologist.
He's a pulmonologist.
Well, he said that the cardiac damage that is endured by extreme athleticism, meaning soccer players, basketball players, people whose output is so high intensity during their matches or their whatevers, if they're not adequately fueled and adequately mineralized, they will sustain cardiac damage. They will anyway at that level of intensity, their whole, young lives doing those exercises. But then add to that, of course, it's a whole other subject, but add to the fact that they already enduring this cardiac damage, this vaccine that was creating random strange effects, causing people to drop dead like that. And that was his, whoever it was, it is Patrick. But anyway, he was saying, yeah, like if, that level of endurance, if you're not adequately mineralized and fueled, you're going to cause cardiac damage. So adequately mineralized means enough magnesium and potassium,
exactly. In the case of the heart, really, magnesium is so crucial. One of the things that's kind of ironic to me is if you have leg cramps at night, that is a kind of dead giveaway for a magnesium deficiency, especially if it's chronic and happens a lot. And one of the things that I get a bit of a chuckle at is friend of mine, I was telling him I'm, going on this podcast and talking about leg cramps. He's like, oh, my mom has leg cramps. I was like, dude, get her some Jigsaw Mag Soothe. He got it. His mom texted him after the first day she used Jigsaw Mag Soothe. She's like, wow, this stuff like works really great. I didn't have any leg cramps. Now, the thing that I chuckle about is I know we're actually helping her entire body, including and especially her heart.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like we humans, we're so like stubborn in certain ways where you're like, no, my heart's just fine. The ticker's doing great. It's like, but I got this leg cramp problem. Do you have anything for that?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I can solve that little quote unquote, finger quotes, that little leg cramps issue that you're having. Yeah, we got something that can help you with that. And it'll help you sleep better. You'll feel more rested in the morning. And it's like, but in my mind, what I kind of am chuckling at is like, dude, totally helping your heart. And that makes me, well, it makes me really happy.
Nice. Yeah. It's like they're warning lights on your dashboard when you
Oh,
have a little
that's
headache, when you have,
perfect.
yeah, you have leg cramps, you have scalp tension, you have, whatever it is.
Yep.
They're just warning lights. It's like, but people think, oh, it's a leg cramp, done. They compartmentalize it and,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. But they're all warning lights to let you know that there are deeper unresolved issues that are going on, or deficiencies that are going on at a much deeper level, for sure.
I'm totally going to use that.
You can use that, and you
I
can
love
use
that.
Farty McGillicuddy all you want. You have my permission.
Fantastic. I hope Ashley never hears this episode.
He's so funny. I'm telling you, I haven't seen the pickleball documentary on Amazon Prime, but you should definitely check it out. I'm going to watch it probably tonight, actually. And I already had a friend who watched it and said it was great. And I think I'm going to try it. I think I'm going to try pickleball. I've never been a fan of like ping pong or tennis or racquetball, like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I don't know. I know it's a competition driven sport, and I just suck at everything athletic, and that's the truth. And so I'm always losing. And so why do I want to play that if I always lose? It's no fun for me to play competition sports when I suck at all of them. So there's that. But I also want to tell everyone, but I will try it. And if I do, I'll keep you posted on how I do, which I'll probably suck.